All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make a quick TLDR video here. So I just got done doing like a 3-hour uh, Pallycast with Talrain and Minnow. Poor Minnow had to talk kind of quietly because he didn't want to wake up his kids. But did a 3-hour video on the Paladin runes for Season of Discovery, like our thoughts and so forth and so on. Not going into like too horrifying, like, nitty gritty detail, like, how you use it specifically against this class, but just like at a big picture thing. But obviously a lot was said, 3-hour video. But while it's still fresh in my mind and while I'm uploading it, I just wanted to take a quick moment to TLDR it for you guys in case you don't want to listen to a 3-hour video on the subject. But I think you should, because you'll miss out on a fair bit of blah, 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 blah. For one, we ended the video by talking about just how overpowered we think certain classes are going to be. So, for example, elemental shamans obviously on everybody's hit list because they got a bit more burst. But the one thing that's absolutely terrifying is shamans getting dual wield is actually insane if you don't know. Why? Because not only is it a massive attack power bonus for enhancement shamans, damn it, what is it? Flame Tongue Weapon does a lot of similar things compared to Seal of Righteousness, in the sense that it has a massive spell power behind it, and it also can critical strike. It doesn't -- 2 proc like Seal of Righteousness, but the fact that it can critical strike is kind of intense. So, for example, I've been bitch slapped by an Elemental Shamans in Era with like Lockamere, just because I had them, and their Lockamere is hitting me for like 70 white damage and like 120, 180 crits. 120 base damage and 180 crit with Flame Tongue Weapon, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And then you give them dual wield and stuff, and I'm just like, yep, they're going to be a little cracked. So, damn, all right, that was interesting. But let's get on to the Paladin things real fast. It's supposed to be a TLDR. All right, just talking runes. Beacon of Light, really, really good, but not as amazing as you may think it is going to be, particularly since there's going to be a lot of burst damage running around. In small fights, it's going to be really good. Going to be extremely good in conjunction with, damn it, where is it? Divine Sacrifice, because you can both Divine Sacrifice, heal somebody else with Holy Lights and be healing yourself at the same time, which really takes a sizable portion of the pain out of Divine Sacrifice in like large-scale battlegrounds. So it is what it is. It's really good from a PvP perspective. From a PvE perspective, of course, Beacon of Light is absolutely amazing. You probably have to take it because nothing else here is heal stuff. Crusader Strike. Crusader Strike is what it is. We don't know if it's going to proc seals or not. If it does proc seals, it's going to be intense and actually really good. She's okay in the burst. She is okay in burst plus stun, so that would be you hit somebody and then you stun them, you give them the business for a little bit, a while longer. She's not bad under those circumstances, but where Crusader Strike is really, really going to shine is if you're time on targeting somebody, meaning if you've got a long period of time, like 20, 30 seconds to really lay into somebody, Crusader Strike is going to do work. The fact that you're regenerating 2% of your maximum mana per Crusader Strike may or may not be a big deal. It really depends on what matchup is happening and what's going on. But basically, as near as I can tell, Crusader Strike just screams time on target. She's probably an amazing time on target ability on her like 4-second cooldown. Hand of Reckoning, if you don't know the math on Crusader Strike, you're basically getting 1 extra melee attack every 5 worth of damage every 5.333 seconds, which is actually pretty good, especially when you compare it to like Divine Storm, which has a 10-second cooldown. So she is a bit of a DPS monster, but she's kind of hard to fit into a short period of time in like a burst, because your GCDs are just so taxed in a traditional Paladin burst, so she doesn't really perform all that well there. But from a time on target perspective, every 4 seconds, regenerating mana, scary stuff. Hand of Reckoning. So from a PvP perspective, at least, nothing here is all that interesting until you get down to, additionally, Righteous Fury is active. Damage takes you below 35% life is reduced by 20%. 1 second, we pause the video and cough. I'm still a little sick. Yeah, it's getting hard to talk there for a second. The math on this thing basically is that if you're not healing yourself or using bubble shields of any kind or doing anything crazy below the 35% mark, the way this thing is written, it's best to assume that it'll activate. If you're like at 40% life and you get hit for 6,000 damage, expect that 6,000 damage to be reduced by 20%. If you're at 50,000, so forth and so on, because it says damage which takes you below. Sometimes Blizzard writes things one way and they act another, but if we're just assuming the way that it's writ, if you don't do any kind of healing below 35%, a 20% damage reduction is worth a 25% increase, if you don't know how math works. Which means that this thing in its entirety is worth a 10% increase in life. But if you start doing things like healing in it and yada, 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 the next thing you know, that'll increase the effectiveness of any kind of heal or bubble shield or anything of that nature whatsoever by an additional 25%. This is actually a really, really big deal for Paladins, especially in PvP. It gets even scarier when you look at it in terms of being heal locked. So there are scenarios for healing based paladins, not healers, healing based paladins. I mean paladins that part of their PvP strategy is to heal in combat. You end up in a situation where like that elemental shaman is just casting lightning bolt after lightning bolt after lightning bolt into you, and you're just holy lighting yourself constantly. If they do more damage than you can do more healing, you die. And you have to gear accordingly to that. But then this thing comes along and it says, yeah, you're never dropping below 35% health without getting a massive healing bonus. So you're just going to automatically win these. It makes it much easier in your gearing process to survive being spell locked. So very interesting stuff. Not very, very good talent, definitely. Okay, cool. Especially in Classic World of Warcraft, which is a really bursty meta. All right, chest. Divine Storm, absolutely amazing. The way it is written, we can pretty much guarantee that it will proc seals. Stuff gets really crazy depending upon what the hell you're, if you can seal twist, and depending upon what the hell you're seal twisting into what else, and what weapon you're using, and blah, 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 blah. So, for example, if you're using like a Dark Edge of Insanity, seal twisted, Seal of Righteousness, and Seal of Justice. Why? Well, because every weapon attack on everyone suddenly has like a 50% chance to not a 50%. Is that that's about right? Yeah, yeah. It would be like a damn near a 40% chance to stun them for 2 seconds, and like a 10% chance that they run around disoriented. And basically another a 3-second stun from your two-handed weapon. It's actually kind of intense. So you could just jump into a pack of people and Divine Storm them with some weird stuff that exists in Classic World of Warcraft, ×2 proc and your 2-second stun, and you could just tell everyone to dance for you or shut the hell up. It's really fascinating, the stuff you could do with Divine Storm. But generally speaking, Divine Storm is really, really good for bursting. It's just a really good ability. Like straight up. She's just really, 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 really good. Horde of Lordaeron was very interesting because even though it's exclusive with Blessing of Might, it's not telling us that we can't stack this with other things. So you can have this thing in Kings, you can have this thing and Seal of, or you can have double Blessing on yourself, basically. It also might not even be purgeable, which could also be interesting. So there are some interesting elements where it's like you take Crusader Strike, but you don't take Divine Storm, and instead you take Horn of Lordaeron, and next thing you know, you've got Blessing of this and Blessing of and this Horn of Lordaeron on at you at the same time. So you have Kings and Lordaeron, and just rolling with that. Not the worst thing in the world, but definitely having issues compared to the other stuff that you can take in this tree. Aegis, absolutely amazing. Especially when you start looking at it in terms of like, well, if I'm not taking Divine Storm, where's my damage coming from? And it's like, oh, well, Crusader Strike is still over there. Aegis actually is pretty intense. Believe it or not, block is not messing around in Classic World of Warcraft, especially when you get into the higher levels, like in Nax Gear and Era. Blocking for classes is a little insane. There's a lot of gear in the game that just says increase block value, increase block percent chance, blah, 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 especially in Nax, especially in AQ, and yada, yada, yada. Block does not screw around in Classic World of Warcraft, so this thing actually has some legitimate use to it. But not to mention the extra readout thing and everything. Very, very interesting. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not entirely sure if it's. You'd have to be a time on target build to use this 100%. And then the question is, yeah, you definitely have to take Crusader Strike at that point. Basically, if you're not taking Divine Storm, you got to take Crusader Strike. Seems to be the TLDR here. Otherwise, you're just sacrificing too much damage. So it'd be Aegis. Yeah, definitely that'd be a good time on target thing. Seal of Martyrdom is basically hot garbage. She's not bad for what she does, being like, multiple targets, dealing 30% additional weapon damage. The problem is it doesn't say that it's holy damage. She's opportunity costed against existing seals, against Divine Storm, against all the reflect damage you get from Aegis. And then you might think that giving mana to your entire raid is really, really good until you realize it's a percentage of a percentage, and then you start doing the math on that. So, like, you hit something for 1,000 damage, and the next thing you know, it's like, cool, you take 100 damage in return, and then everybody in your raid gains a whopping 2 mana back. And you're like, congratulations, this thing might be the equivalent of giving everybody like 10 MP5. Like it's terrible. Now, if you can seal twist the damn thing, which they tested, and you couldn't seal twist the thing, but Blizzard said they would be open to it, now we might be talking. If you can seal twist this, now we might be talking. But if you can't seal twist it, it's like, yuck. But yeah, kind of sad, but it is what it is. So you talked about Aegis Divine Storm. We talked about this thing. Okay, last bits, right? TLDR. Avenger Shield, absolutely amazing. You probably have to wear a shield to use this damn thing, which can really mess with Reckoning and a bunch of other builds. But just being able to slow targets for 10 seconds and the fact that it does a lot of damage and it jumps between targets is actually pretty intense. And honestly, we're like, what the hell are you thinking, giving Paladins a slow in Classic World of Warcraft? It's like, so it's kind of that good. However, I'm also tickled pink by Exorcism. Exorcism has a bunch of really, really nasty benefits to it that I talk about pretty much at length in the podcast. But just having extra chip damage that you can pump into people while you're doing stuff is really good. The fact that you don't have to switch over to a shield is absolutely amazing. Switching over to shield is not the worst thing in the world, though, because there's always a bunch of crazy offhands that really help Paladin a lot. But Exorcism, I'm torn. I'm like, Exorcism, Avenger Shield, these are both absolutely amazing. I am painfully aware of the value of a slow on a Paladin, but I'm also painfully aware of the value of just being able to pepper people to death at a 30-yard range, especially certain classes, and then the fact that it's got 100% additional critical strike chance. And I started having to ask myself questions like, well, when that damn warlock over there turns into a frickin' demon, do I get 100% critical strike chance on him now? If I don't, can I Exorcism and Avenger Shield him anyways? Because that would be kind of cool. And then, of course, if you have Avenger Shield and you're fighting like a Warlock, you can, both Exorcism and Avenger Shield the pet down as well. So it's very interesting. Inspiration Exemplar. We don't quite know how this thing works. It could be amazing or it could be hot garbage. She is in her own category, basically as a healer, as a battle healer paladin, like BGs and whatnot. You basically have to choose between like Divine Sacrifice and Exemplar. We already talked about how Divine Sacrifice and the other healing thing synergize extremely well together. Damn it, what is it? Beacon of Light. Those two go together like peas in a pod. However, being a walking tremor totem that we think pulses basically every 3 seconds is absolutely intense and terrifying, and it might be absolutely amazing. If this thing affects you as well and it removes fears, then the next thing we know, we have to have a weird conversation between Avenger Shield, Exorcism, and Inspiration Exemplar for the purposes of putting warlocks where they belong, if that makes any sense. Like warlocks and even warriors really rely on fear against paladins like a lot. You wouldn't think they would, but damn, they do, because they need to get those bandages in and stuff like that. So very interesting, very interesting. Divine Sacrifice, absolutely amazing. 30% all damage redirected to you, but it leaves you with 20% life. The fact that the fact that it lasts 10 seconds doesn't really matter. But the fact that it also empowers you for 10 seconds, I would like to see the empowerment last longer. 10 seconds is way too short of a time. I prefer it would be like 20 seconds. It's just one of these two as a healing paladin. Like pick one. Like there's not really much to say about it. It is what it is. Rebuke. I know a lot of people are really excited for Rebuke. From a PvP perspective, what Rebuke is basically going to do is this. Where once you could only get one, it basically gives you an extra auto attack. So it's like that caster over there is trying to do X thing that you don't want them to do, whether that's fear you, sheep you, get a damn heal in, finish that lightning bolt that's going to kill you, or that lava burst that's going to kill you. This is just you telling them to, shut the hell up, and so you can get an extra auto attack in, basically, or a Hammer of Wrath, or an auto attack and a Hammer of Wrath, or something of that nature. Other than that, she's not really doing much to you. If you don't know, our theory is that it's got like a 14-second cooldown. It locks the school for like 2 seconds. Now, if this thing had a shorter cooldown, I'd be having a different conversation. If this thing had a 3-second school lock, I'd also be having a different conversation, because that means you could at least Holy Light in that space and time under a lot of circumstances. Why I'd be having another conversation if it's like a 10-second cooldown or something like that is because you can actually chain a bunch of things together. You can chain... we already have, as a paladin, you already have plenty of ways to tell people you don't like what they're doing. Like, please stop healing. Thank you very much. Right? Like, you got nades, you got repent, you got goblin mortar, you've got seal twisting, justice to hopefully tell them to shut up. And if you could rebuke somebody and then chain a bunch of stuff together and then rebuke them again, then that would be amazing. But at a 14-second cooldown, there's no way you're going to be able to do that, so it might not be that good. And I think that's it. That's pretty much the TLDR on it. What's good, what I think is amazing, what I don't think is good, blah, 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 and why. There is an honorable mention, in my personal opinion. How long is this video? Only 20 minutes. This is a 20-minute TLDR. Awesome. Is Holy Shock. Holy Shock in this meta being on a 30-second cooldown is borderline unacceptable. For Season of Discovery, it is an absolute worthless talent. She's barely noticeable from only the purpose of like chip damage. So, for example, if you want to use Exorcism and the whole reason why you'd use Exorcism on a deep holy build would be to try to pepper people to death and kill them through chip damage, which is perfectly viable as a paladin. Holy Shock is additional chip damage. Any additional chip damage and a chip damage build is absolutely amazing. So Holy Shock is not completely worthless, but damn, at a 30-second cooldown, holy crap. Painful. The other thing that's super painful is the fact that Holy Shield only has 4 charges. It's like, yeah, we get access to a rune that increases our block chance by 30%, which is really impressive. But Holy Shield still is on a 10-second cooldown with only 4 charges, unlike in TBC where you could spec it and get 8 charges. So I don't really know how I feel about that in general. Repent is still absolutely amazing. Don't go anywhere. Don't change that. The only other thought I have is Paladin tanking looks weird. And I have a weird a thought about this. You might not like what I'm about to say, but let me just say it real fast. Um, Hand of Reckoning in PvE giving us like a taunt. And then with increasing our 30% block chance with a shield. Um, all the bonuses we're getting to be able to tank, I think still makes us a significantly inferior tank to like a warrior. Because I'll sit back and I ask myself, okay, what the hell does Paladin have that a warrior doesn't? And the answer is not really anything. But then I reverse the question. I'm like, what do warriors have that paladins don't? And I was like, warriors have multiple taunts. They got 3 damn taunts. So in case something goes wrong with one taunt, they just use another taunt. They have a number of emergency use buttons, like they got Last Stand. They've got, what's the other one? Shield Wall, for example. You can't really say the same thing about Bubble. Like, Bubble's not going to work like that. Bop's not going to work like that. That's for damn sure. Uh, we theoretically have Lay on Hands, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so I like LOH myself, and that's my emergency, like an hour-long cooldown emergency. Like what the hell? Um, oh, and the other, probably the most damning thing of all is HP pools. So Warriors just, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Warriors just by existing and looking pretty at level 60 have something stupid like 1,000 more HP than a Paladin does. And we don't really have anything. That ability of I take less damage when I drop below 35% life doesn't really compensate for the fact that Warriors have a ton of HP and some emergency on use cooldowns. Now, I could be wrong. Because when I examine what tanks look like in TBC, they have about as much as raid paladins were raid tanks in TBC, and they have about as much in TBC as they're giving paladins in Season of Discovery. It looks a little different, but because you don't have 8 charges on Holy Shield, but they're giving us similar stuff. So I could be completely wrong about it, but I'm just looking at it and I'm like, why the hell would anybody want a Paladin tank over a Warrior tank, even under these conditions? But anyways, I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Volt, boys. Am I going to end the video here? Like, is that what we're going to do? Okay, cool. Pfft, lol. All right, Deus Volt, boys.